So we're off to a bit of a rolling start on the Waddell Williams Type 44 Gilmore Red Lion Racer. Got the cockpit floor installed. A little bit more of the infill around the front end of the cowling is done, or front end of the fuselage. What I need to do now is, so a couple things. One, the the Williams Brothers Wasp motor kit will not fit inside of this cowling. It's close. I'd have to really push all the pistons into the crankcase, but then that crankcase is just a little too big. And I went on to Park Flyer Plastics website, but I couldn't. I don't know what's going on with their website, but I couldn't complete a purchase. They make a nice 3.5-inch motor, which is about what I need. 3.5-inch Wasp 9-cylinder engine, radial engine is what's required. And I can't seem to get my hands on one, or there isn't one that'll fit from Williams. Their smallest is 1/12, and the smallest I can make that is about a 1/18 scale, and it just won't fit into here. So we're going to make our own. So what I need to first do is figure out what the diameter of this thing is, and then make sure that when I build a motor for it, it fits inside of this. So it'll need to be both small enough diameter and skinny enough, thin enough. That's more or less where we are if I trace this. So that's our tracing. So our actual motor diameter, let's see if we can find the center of this thing. Alright, so if we go out here at this intersection, that should bisect the center of our circle. And if we go out here, right at this intersection, yeah, well, that's not quite right, is it? Alright. Alright, and let's do this at this corner. Right there, right there, there. I know there's a way to do this. I just must have missed that day in math class. Okay. Let's see. So we want to be in order to fit inside. We want our finished motor to be about that diameter. And what is is that? That is exactly 3.5 inches. Alright, so a 3.5 inch motor. The Park Flyer one would have been perfect. But when we make our motor now, this is about where we want it to be. So we need to determine a crankcase diameter. That's probably a little too big. You probably want to be somewhere like around here. With our crankcase diameter. See if that's about right. That's about dead center. Okay. So there's our crankcase center. What we'll have to do is we'll use the 3" by 1/4" stock, probably 3 layers, to make the crankcase, and then we'll put 9 flat spots on it at the back. We'll leave the front round. In fact, probably lay on a piece of round 3/32 for fascia, and have the heavier stock be what the flattened 9-sided crankcase. After that, we'll use dowel rod material to cut cylinders and wrap them with a heavy thread to replicate the cooling fins. And then we'll dress it up with the wiring harness, push rods, and plug wires. And with that, we should have a motor that fits neatly behind our cowling, which looks like this. So you see, if this is our engine diameter here, the cowling fascia will hide the tops of the cylinders where the rockers would be and all that, so I won't have to model those necessarily. I won't have to build those on. We'll just have the cylinder heads go out, maybe capped with a flat disc for the push rods to install into, but all of that will be happening up behind the fascia here, right? So what you'll see will be a finished motor. What you won't see will be the more or less unfinished ends. They'll all be painted in case somebody wants to hold the airplane up and kind of get a look in there. But I don't think anyone would be able to tell that it wasn't a completed motor. Right, just enough to fill the opening and give us an adequate look of a Wasp 9-cylinder radial engine through the front of the cowling. And that's how we do it. More or less how. That's how I just did it. And you can do it another way. If you know the right way to locate the center of a circle, you're better off than I am. That's how we fake it. But I did find the center, so that's okay. And you can use, I mean, a compass. This is old school. Circle guide like this, if you have one that's big enough. This is the largest one I have. I don't typically need to draw or create a circle larger than any of these for the scale that I work with in these kits, but in this case a larger one would have been great. You can also find something that'll work. In this case, the cowling gives you a reference point. You just need to make sure you're inside of this diameter, and that's where the compass came in handy. This is a part that, as you see, I've separated the cowling from its sheet. This was on here, And this was inside of here, I think this way. Yeah. So I didn't do that on camera, but the way that's done, the way I do it anyway, is to first take a fine point marker and go around the part and delineate exactly where you're going to make your cuts. You want to see where your blade's going to be. And then to make the actual cuts, okay, so instead of trying to cut around the part, all you do is hold the blade where you want it to be and spin the part. Right, this is a little difficult now, but you keep that point right there and you just spin the part right along your black line, and what you end up with is a nice clean removal. And you see how we followed the black line. Now there's a little deviation here, but you see how that works. You don't turn the knife, you don't try to cut around and around and around and around, you know, like this. You just hold the blade where it needs to be and spin the part against the blade. Okay? Same with the inside. Now on the inside I worked on from this point and spun the part in this direction and just worked carefully around, keeping the blade in one place right on the black line, and then just carefully and slowly. And you remember, you're not trying to cut through on the first pass, you're scoring. You're only putting the tip in there and dragging it maybe halfway through the plastic, not even that. You're just dragging it and creating that line. And then the more times you go around, the less you need to worry about holding the point in place. It's being held in place by the groove that you created on your first rotation. Second rotation, same amount of pressure, but now you're in the groove, so you're deepening the groove. At some point the tip might try to actually break through. Once it does that, you're done. All you have to do then is go around and tap that part and then work it around. It'll be popping off of that. It'll actually be breaking free along your score cut. And you end up, you end up with a nice clean cut. Right? Same with the outside. Once you go around the outside, maybe 2 passes, maybe once the tip does break through, just stop and then come back and just work that seam. Same thing, you just want to put a little bit of pressure in both directions and it'll pop. And once it pops, you just want to work your way gently around. Now if you come to a point where it's resisting separation, like you feel like it's scored but not deeply enough, and if you keep going, what may happen is it could split and split your part. So stop, set it back down, find the groove ahead of that spot where it's still together, and just drag the blade through that area one more time, just that small area where it's binding. Pick it back up and it should break free at that point. Okay, that's how I remove the plastic parts from wherever you get them. I mean, whether it's a Gilmore part or a Dumas part, that's doesn't matter. It's just that's how I do it. Just remove any plastic part from its sheet. Now the one other thing I'll do, this part is supposed to receive this bulkhead, so this would be attached, glued up, and then inserted into the back of this. And what I'll probably do instead of this is a solid piece. I don't, if I do use this, it's going to be hollowed out because this is too much for my motor. It doesn't leave enough room for the motor to rest against it. So I'll probably replace this with a solid piece here. That way when I go to cut into it and just leave about 1/4 of an inch all the way around, it'll be a little bit stronger, won't have those seams in it. Okay, a couple other points. I think in the earlier video, talked about how the landing gear on this airplane is not anchored in the fuselage, it's anchored in the wing. So I don't need to bend the wire yet. I don't need to install landing gear to any of these bulkheads. It doesn't go to the wing, doesn't go to the fuselage, it goes to the wing. So that'll make sanding and smoothing this a little bit easier. I have piano wire to sand around. But I did want to show you here on these Dumas kits, on this rib that intersects the wing saddle, I always put a doubler reinforcement across that. That one tends to flex a little bit as you're sanding, and if it fractures in here, that can create a problem. I mean, not really a problem, but this is just preventative, right? And you can actually put 1/16 X bracing or lateral bracing, just lateral, couple of pieces of 1/16 square stringer material on these to help keep them from folding. Sometimes what will happen is you're finishing this or installing infill pieces, you can create a little bit of pressure that might crack these skinny formers, and that's not ideal. So a little bit of extra support laterally here is helpful if you want to. I sometimes do, sometimes don't. These are a little beefier, and there's only, I think, 3 of them here. And once this is all infilled, that situation goes away. But this one I always double up for sure, just because it's out here exposed and there's no infill support for that. Right? So there we are. This is our current state of the Waddell Williams Model 44 Gilmore racer. Right. Thanks for watching. Have a good day.